Several years ago, I did a video on an elephant that wrought death and destruction across India in the mid-2000s. The elephant's name? Osama bin Laden. Today's video is about a similarly murderous elephant named Mary. Mary, a 5-ton Asian elephant, was the star attraction in the Sparks world-famous show circus around the turn of the century. On September 11th, 1916, the circus came to St. Paul, Virginia, a small mining town where they encountered Red Eldridge. Not much is known about this young man, although it's widely reported he was a homeless drifter who was working as a hotel janitor at the time. Assumedly, the circus lifestyle appealed to the nomad, and he asked the circus for a job. Now today you can go to university for 4 years to earn a high skill diploma, and that's still not enough for most employers, but back then it was like, you're a homeless janitor? Ride my elephant, I'll pay you to do it. But I don't know anything about it. I said ride the fucking elephant. And so Red Eldridge was employed as Mary's handler, despite having no relevant experience. He wouldn't last long at this job, however. The very next day, the circus visited Kingsport, Tennessee, and paraded through the town with Eldridge leading Mary. There are slightly different accounts of what happened next, but it seems Mary got distracted, possibly by a watermelon rind, and stopped in her tracks, prompting Eldridge to poke her behind the ear with a bullhook. Mary reacted violently, knocking Eldridge to the ground with her trunk and then smushing his head underfoot. Red Eldridge was dead after just 1 day as an unqualified elephant handler. The crowded streets erupted in panic, fearing the elephant was about to rampage. Reportedly, a man opened fire on Mary with a pistol, but the small caliber rounds had little effect on the beast. For her part, the otherwise gentle Mary seemed satisfied with the death of Eldridge and was immediately calmed by circus workers. Under different circumstances, that might have been the end of it. The elephant could have quietly undergone a name change and maybe been sold to another circus. But the very public and brutal death of a man in the streets, observed by hundreds of witnesses, was not something that would easily go away. Quickly, newspapers spread the story, dubbing the elephant Murderous Mary, and nearby towns were making it clear that they would not welcome the Sparks circus if Mary was a part of it. The owner, Charlie Sparks, was faced with a terrible dilemma. Mary was a well-loved animal, having been with the circus for well over a decade. He viewed Mary as more of a pet than a circus act, but now it seemed like she would be the cause of his financial ruin. However, he found a solution in the old adage, the show must go on. The next day, in Erwin, Tennessee, the circus put on an unscheduled performance, in which Mary was conspicuously absent. It was merely a tease for the main event. When the show was over, spectators flocked to the nearby railway yard, where Mary was being led towards the tracks. She was stopped by a rail-mounted derrick, and a chain was placed around her neck. For her crime of murder, Mary was sentenced to hang. She had fallen foul of the animal kingdom's most recent law. Don't fuck with humans. Even over 100 years after Red Eldridge's death, here we all are still discussing it. If a human is killed, there will be consequences. Be the killer one of our own or another species. We will move heaven and earth in our need for revenge, and we will be unrelenting, unmerciful, and in Mary's case, cruel. The winch began to retract the chain around Mary's neck, hoisting her into the air. Circus workers and spectators alike found it difficult to watch as Mary struggled. But suddenly, disaster. The chain snapped and the elephant slammed into the ground. Spectators ran for cover, expecting the now free elephant to turn on her tormentors once more. But Mary was stunned still, likely gravely injured by the fall. Quickly, another chain was fastened around her neck, and this time, Mary was hanged to death. One story of uncertain accuracy claims a veterinarian examined Mary's body and found she had a severely infected tooth in the spot where Eldridge had prodded her, which would mean she had likely only lashed out in response to intense pain. I initially thought this topic would make for kind of a funny video, but it's actually fucking horrible. The supposed photograph of Mary's hanging was widely distributed after the event, but once again, it's of dubious veracity. It's at the very least heavily retouched and likely an out-and-out fake. The local newspapers of the time had a habit of sensationalism, which is how Erwin became known as the town that hanged an elephant, a turn of phrase that perfectly highlights the great lengths they went to perform such a vindictive and petty act. Seeing as the town is not widely known for much else, this has led to some stigma. In 2016, 100 years after Mary's execution, the town attempted to reform its image by hosting annual events where artists paint fiberglass elephants around the town, which are later auctioned off with the proceeds going to the Elephant Sanctuary in Hohenwald, Tennessee. We might be blinded by our need for revenge, but at least we might feel a bit bad about it afterwards. 100 years afterwards. The moral of the story is, do whatever the hell you want and leave it to your descendants to atone for your sins. Well, perhaps you would like to see another video in this style, but, maybe a more pleasant story. Well, I have a bunch of similar videos, and most of them are somewhat pleasant. Well, they're at least not as difficult to listen to, besides the grating sound of my voice. You can subscribe to see more in the future, and join the channel membership to support me monetarily. Thank you, and until next time, stay safe. When the show was over, spectators flooded to the nearby railway yard. When the show was over, spectators flooded to the nearby railway yard, where Mary was being led towards the tracks. I just realised that says flocked and not flooded. Fuck. Okay.